Thanks everyone for joining us. John and I are really excited to be presenting this series of webinars to you. So today we're going to talk about goals and objectives for your digital marketing and fundraising strategy. A little bit about me. I'm a digital marketing strategist, an author, trainer, speaker, coach, all the kind of great stuff that I put in my LinkedIn bio. I work primarily with nonprofits and mission-focused organizations on their digital marketing strategies. So telling their story, getting the word out, what does that mean? Raising awareness, what does that mean? We'll talk about all of that today. So a lot of what we talk about today is exactly what I do with my nonprofit clients. And stay tuned next week, next Monday at 11 for John's webinar. It'll be about personas, creating and identifying the audience, the target audience, creating a listening dashboard, really figuring out who you're talking to and what you want them to do. So the webinars go really well together if you want to jumpstart your digital marketing success in 2016. A little bit of housekeeping. If you can't hear us or if there are any problems, please type your message into the chat box, the question box. I will save, I need to save all the questions until the end, so bear with me. If there's something that is urgent or if a number of you are asking the same question and you don't understand a concept, John will let me know and we can address it in the webinar. But other than that, we will save most of the questions until the end. We encourage you to tweet along with us. So our Twitter handles, I'm Julia C. Social, he's John Hayden, and you can ask questions there also, or share little nuggets of wisdom that you've gleaned from this webinar, hopefully. So once again, that's the webinar next week, Understanding Your Donors and Online Community. So I'm really excited to do this today. This is what we're going to learn. We're going to identify goals. With those goals, we'll pick the best objectives, the ones that make the most sense, and figure out how to kind of use them if you've never done so before, and how to be awesome at measuring. So all of the objectives that we will talk about today will have a measurement component and be able to be measured, because that's the name of the game. If you don't know where you're going, if you don't know what success looks like, if you don't know what you're measuring, you can't improve, you can't change, you can't adapt and evolve, and you won't be spending your time or your resources very efficiently. So that is the name of the game today. I love this cartoon. I love everything by Tom Fishburne at markettunis.com. We've all been in this meeting. I've been in this meeting. Okay, so what's this idea? What are we going to do? And someone says, we're going to join Facebook. We're going to start a YouTube campaign. We're going to go viral. We're going to start a mobile app. We're going to get on Snapchat or Pinterest, whatever it is. And then I say, well, what are you going to do? Let's walk it a little bit back. Someone's like, I don't know. We'll figure it out later. So too many nonprofits and too many businesses start with the tools. They start at the end point rather than figuring out which tool is best and what are the strategies, what are the objectives that they want to accomplish, and which tools are best for that. They think about the tool. So this is my number one question that I get. Which social media platforms should we be on? Now, that is sort of like someone calling me that I've never met before and I have no idea who they are, and saying, where should I go shopping? Well, I don't know. Do you like Kohl's? Do you like Nordstrom? Do you like fancy clothes? Do you like casual clothes? Are you sporty? Do you do yoga? There's so much more that I need to know before I can direct you to the proper store. Or, someone says, what should I make for dinner tonight? Okay, what do you like to eat? Do you have any allergies? Do you have any food aversions? What did you have last night? So asking which social media platforms should we be on is the number one question that I receive a lot of the time. But you look at the marketing technology landscape, I don't know. So this is not the answer that people want to hear. It depends. But it definitely depends. I love this quote from Josh Hoffman. Answering this question is like turning on the oven before going to buy food. It's definitely a valid question, and it's something that's important because there are a lot of resources out there saying you need to be on this, you need to be on that. Nonprofits need to be on Instagram. Nonprofits need to do Facebook live streaming. Nonprofits need to do this. So I understand, and it's confusing and overwhelming, and it's definitely a valid question, but several questions need to be answered before we can even get into that question. So when choosing the right platform, you have to think about your audience, your goals, how you can reach them, and we'll talk about goals and objectives in this webinar. But I include this infographic just to state that each social network, obviously, you see the 10 million social networks or marketing technology applications on this chart. But if you're thinking about, the big 7 social media networks, they are all at different countries. I mean, that's like comparing, America to Denmark to Australia. It's really difficult to say where you should be. What language are you speaking? What is the purpose? Each network has its own set of rules, its own set of etiquette, its own downsides. They all have their own downsides. They all have their own challenges, but they all have their own benefits also. So you need to figure out who you want to reach, what are your goals, what are you going to do there, way, 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 way before tools. So we won't even talk about tools today. We're going to just talk about what you need to do first. Unfortunately, this is the myth we were sold. You create a Facebook page. Your board chair says, oh, this might have been 10 years ago, might have been 5 years ago, might have been 6 months ago. You say, oh, okay, we need a Facebook page. We're going to post something, and then donations are just going to roll right in. We don't have to do anything else. The reality is it's a lot more difficult to get engagement, to get action, to get donations, to get volunteers, and this is because you may not have that proper strategy in place, that proper roadmap. You might be waking up every morning saying, what am I going to post on Facebook this morning? And then just pulling something off your website or finding some article or have it be a very arbitrary post or a tweet. So the reality is that it's a lot more work and it involves a lot more planning and preparation. So the first thing that we'll talk about is you must know the why. Why are you doing this? It's not what you're doing, but why you do it. This is also an important question that your donors ask you all the time. You always need to know the why. They don't not really understand, they don't really care about the logistics of what you do, but why you do it. What is being changed in society? What is the impact on your community members? Why are they going to give you this money? What is in it for them in the end? I love this. I need this keychain because I do love shiny objects a lot. But don't get caught up in shiny object syndrome. It's very, very, very easy to do. Like I said before, the landscape is overwhelming, confusing. Don't worry about any of this. Don't worry about any of this right now. So the first step that you need to take to kind of jumpstart your digital marketing success is kind of working backwards. You need to define your goal. You need to really, really think carefully about what you want to happen and how do you define marketing success. Now, there are 2 ways that I do this with my clients. Strategic planning is very, very different than digital marketing, communications, and online fundraising planning because your nonprofit has a goal. Your nonprofit has a vision. It has a mission statement. I'm not talking necessarily about that goal and that mission statement. Clearly, your digital marketing goals and objectives have to fit in, and they cannot be at odds with your overall goal or vision. But I'm not talking about strategic planning here. I'm not talking about defining success as ending veteran homelessness in Boston by 2020, closing the achievement gap for urban youth by 2020, that kind of thing. That's obviously your vision, and that's what you're working towards, and that's what your program work is towards. Your marketing communications goals they are goals that are going to lead you to that goal because they're going to help you raise awareness and recruit more donors, connect better, connect more deeply with current donors, those kinds of things. But what I'm talking about now, what will be different in your organization a year from now if your marketing is successful? If all of these things that you're doing, your email marketing, your blogging, your social media, your website, what does success look like, and what is kind of the end point that you want to reach? Who is defining this success? Obviously, success for your program officers very different than success defined by executives versus the board versus donors. So think about what success looks like maybe through a lot of the different eyes of your target audience, and John will talk more about target audience in the next webinar. But your marketing goals, they can't be at odds. They need to align with your mission and vision, and every goal that you set for marketing needs to be helping to promote, it needs to be going along with that mission and vision, if that makes sense. So I'm a huge fan of BHAGs, big, hairy, audacious goals. Those are goals that you might think are crazy. People might think you're crazy for setting them. People might think that you should step back or take a little bit of a step back. I think BHAGs are fantastic. So we'll talk about the most common marketing communications goals for nonprofit executives as found in the Nonprofit Communication Trends Report. But define your own BHAGs, your big, hairy, audacious goals, and work your way backwards. Work your way to baby steps. What's the first measurable step you need to accomplish within the next 6 to 12 months to move toward your goal? That's the way you think about SMART objectives and goals. These are the top goals for communications directors in 2015-2016. Also, you should definitely get the 2016 Nonprofit Communications Trends Report. It's fantastic. It's up at nonprofitmarketingguide.com, just so you can see benchmarks, you can see where your organization falls in terms of online marketing, online fundraising, online communications, and even direct mail appeals, events, those kinds of things. So these are the top goals. And what I read in the Communications Trends Report is that these goals rarely change. It's always the same 5, year in, year out, year in, year out. And the importance, the priority of where they all land change, but it's usually these same 5 goals. So we're going to break down each of these goals, and if these are goals that your organization has, we're going to even define the goal even more specifically, because brand awareness is obvious. I don't know what that means really. So we'll define the goal more specifically, and then we will get into creating the SMART objectives for each goal. I'm sure that if your goal is not here, I'd be interested to know what it is. Occasionally a goal is to retain more clients. Engaging community, I guess that could fall under engaging community, but a marketing goal that is very valid, it could be to engage more clients, change behavior, that kind of thing. But that would kind of go under brand awareness. So I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent there. But if you don't feel like your goal, your organizational goal is there, type it into the chat box and we can discuss it. But these are kind of the top goals. Everything kind of falls under these 5 things. Pretty vague. Brand awareness. What is awareness? What does awareness mean? I feel like it might mean getting people to talk about an issue, getting people to post about it, getting people to write about it. How in the world do you measure getting people to talk about an issue? You could measure searches, you can measure hashtags, we'll talk about that with objectives, but you need to specify what is awareness, and then what impact do you want this raised awareness to have? Now that could be we want more corporate partnerships, or we're trying to do a capital campaign next year. So we want to raise awareness about our organization so that when we go to these capital campaign donors, they will have heard of us and they'd be much more likely to donate. We want to raise awareness because we really want to change we just want to change the conversation on an issue. That's those goals, that goal, changing the conversation, changing behavior, very, very, very hard to measure. Certainly an important goal. But you want to start thinking of things that you could possibly put some metrics on and possibly measure. What do you want someone to do with their raised awareness? I like what Paul Waldman said from the American Prospect. He said he feels like when nonprofits say they want to raise awareness, it's a self-sustaining cycle. We have to raise money to raise awareness so we can keep raising money and keep raising awareness. What does all this awareness raised actually lead to at the end of the day? Does it help you do your job better? Does it help you accomplish your mission? Does it help you become a better steward of funds? I mean, what does brand awareness get you at the end of the day? So there's brand awareness versus cause awareness. Brand awareness is your organization's name. That's brand awareness. So brand awareness is, I work for XYZ nonprofit. I want people to know what XYZ nonprofit does. I want them to know the programs. I want them to know the mission. I want them to understand the impact in the community. I want them to hear our stories. I want them to tell our stories to their friends. That's brand awareness. Cause awareness, obviously, is around a cause. So something like World Cancer Day. I was surprised by this statistic. Nearly 200 health awareness days, weeks, and months are on the U.S. National Health Observances calendar. And more than 145 Awareness Day bills have been introduced in Congress since 2005. I would be very interested to know, are these awareness days accomplish anything? I would love to see a study done. How do you measure this cause awareness? Cause awareness is very ephemeral. It's not easy to pin down. You could do pre and post tests. Obviously, something with the like the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge, awareness was raised only because people that had never heard of ALS were talking about it and posting about it. So you could say, I don't know the actual statistics, and I'm sure they are very easily found on the increased website traffic, increased searches on ALS, that kind of thing. And if Google did a study, I'm sure they could be able to prove that awareness was raised. But what did that awareness raised get us? With ALS, it was increased donations, which is fantastic. A lot of these other awareness days, we don't know. Do people donate on World Cancer Day? Maybe they do. I don't know. So be careful when you talk about raising awareness around a cause unless you have some way to show that more people are talking about it, discussing it. And if they are discussing it, in the end, what does that get you? Are there going to be more breast cancer screenings? Are people going to be more likely to get their moles checked and their freckles checked in the summer? I mean, what are the purposes of World Cancer Day, really? And I am not saying that it's not a good day and it's not something that we should recognize and celebrate. I'm just saying I want to be focused on data and ROI, and if you're going to be creating great infographics and videos and spending all this time, what is happening at the end? What does success look like? What does success look like at the end of the day? So some metrics that you may want to measure for brand awareness. Blog posts written on your topic about you by outside people, outside links, increased shares of your content. That could be a video, a blog, a photo, searches, website traffic. You can measure all of this with Google Analytics and Facebook Insights and Twitter Analytics. There are special dashboards that you can purchase, such as HubSpot, those kinds of things, where you can measure all of this within one glance. But if you're doing it sort of on the fly, very DIY, you want to go into Google Analytics and be looking at patterns and trends over time. Social media engagement, anecdotes, that's something where I love anecdotes. I think that absolutely every nonprofit should be measuring them. That's something where a board member comes up to you and says, oh, a friend of mine saw our post on Facebook and asked me about it. or a friend of mine heard about you on the radio and asked about it. So you need to be writing them down. It's not the most qualitative form of measurement, but it does help. It does work. So you can see an increased trend of kind of buzz and conversation over time. Email signups, and then you can measure use of a hashtag. So some objectives you may want to create around measuring brand awareness. Traffic to our blog will increase by 50% in 6 months. Oh, so I realized I didn't go over what SMART objectives mean. SMART means specific, measurable, actionable, relevant, and time-based. So they need to be a specific action that's going to be taken. There needs to be a number attached, and there needs to be a time stamp on it. Traffic to our blog will increase by 50% in 6 months. Great. Our email list will grow by 500 subscribers in the next year. Mentions and uses of our hashtag will increase 25% in 6 months, in 1 year, whatever you want to put the time on it. So the key with creating SMART objectives is to have the specific action that you can measure, what the increase is going to be, and then the timestamp on it. When will it get done by? Okay, so engaging community. What does this look like, and to what end? So, a sample goal for engaging community: to develop dynamic, representative, engaged social media communities that best represent the nonprofit XYZ community. I've worked on that specific goal with a client before, and I think it's a very worthwhile goal, and it's a very big, hairy, audacious goal, and we broke it down into more specific SMART objectives. So engaging community, by the way. Engaging community, people do not know what that means, so we have to break that down. For this particular client, we determined that we would measure social media engagement. What that meant, what those channels were, we would identify that later. We wanted to see a 50% more engagement. Now, engagement can specifically be measured. By engagement, what I mean are, retweets, mentions, likes, comments, shares on Facebook, likes and comments on Instagram, repins, comments, and likes on Pinterest. So every social media platform has a specific, they usually have more than one specific method of engagement, and you have to go into each platform to measure that engagement. So when I say 50% more engagement, that doesn't mean, I'm not saying engagement in the sense of we can't measure it. I mean, you can specifically measure engagement and what engagement is identified by. Engagement on an email newsletter could be open rates, click-through rates, forward rates. You would have to determine specifically the metrics that you're going to measure for your organization. Engagement on a blog, comments, shares, social media shares, those kinds of things. We'll see a 25% increase in shares of our content on social media. Shares, that's the gold standard that you want to reach for. So engagement is a little bit softer. That's somebody that's liking it, maybe commenting, maybe just putting, double clicking, double tapping the heart on Instagram. But sharing content, absolutely something that you need to be measuring, because sharing content means that I like it so much that it's representative of me and my values and my beliefs, and it's how I want to portray myself to my fans and followers and audience. It's reflective of me. It's so good or so controversial, or it made me mad. It elicited some kind of response. It made me happy. It inspired me. It elicited a response. Sharing is huge. Not many people share. The majority of us don't actually share content. So when you do get those shares, it's huge, and you should pat yourself on the back. So that's something that you absolutely need to be looking at. 50% increase in engagement online from our target demographic. We'll analyze the demographics on each account after 6 months. So this client had a specific target demographic that they were trying to reach and garner more engagement from, and that was one of their specific SMART objectives that they wanted to measure. So some other metrics for engaging community: views, shares, forms filled out, maybe a survey completed, attendance, participation at events, and opens, click-throughs on email newsletters. Opens, not the best measurement of engagement. It is important, and as long as you're seeing a trend over time of an increased open rate, then I think it's fantastic to measure. Open is kind of like reach on Facebook, how many people saw it, not necessarily how many people engaged or took an action. So click-through rate, did they click on something in your email newsletter, is much better metric. Acquiring donors. Acquiring donors, you would think that would be very, very easy to measure. Did we acquire more donors or did we not? I always see when I hear acquiring donors, I remember when I used to work at the domestic violence center in Virginia, and my executive director would always say, we have to go after more grants. We have to go after more foundations. We have to go after more corporations. And I would always show her this lovely graph every year and say, we need to focus on individuals. So in terms of acquiring donors, I really believe that you need to be focusing on individuals because, as you can see, they're the biggest piece of the pie here. So some metrics that you can focus on. We will gain 100 new donors through our annual multi-channel appeal, gain 100 new donors through our events, recruit 50 people to set up peer-to-peer online fundraising campaign pages for us. That's where it's like CrowdRise or Indiegogo or Network for Good or Classy or any of those where you can actually, I can set up a page and fundraise for a nonprofit that I like. A lot of peer-to-peer fundraising is done around events like marathons, or we just had a polar plunge here in Beverly, north of Boston, where I live. It was just Saturday. I couldn't believe it. I did not do it, but the PTO that I belonged to had a team, and they plunged into the water. But they had set up a team page, and that's where we donated, and they raised money for Habitat for Humanity, which was fantastic. So getting people to set up peer-to-peer online fundraising campaigns if you want to acquire new donors, that is definitely a goal. Notice I'm not going into the strategies, the tactics, the actual tools yet, because that's another webinar. That's another whole topic. You got to get through the goals and objectives first. Retaining donors. Oh, I know it makes all of you development directors sick to your stomach when you hear these statistics. For every 100 donors gained, 103 were lost. For every $100 gained, $95 was lost through attrition. So retaining donors needs to be a stated goal of every single nonprofit's marketing strategy and fundraising strategy in 2016, definitely, and beyond. How can you measure retaining donors? Well, you can just measure your attrition rate, or you can set up more specific goals that will set you up for retention success. So we will have a repeat donor retention rate of 75%, and you want to look up things like this infographic, fundraising effectiveness project survey. Bloomerang has great ones. AFP has fantastic statistics on donor retention and attrition. Benchmark yourself. So 63% is the benchmark of the sector for repeat donor retention. So you don't want to say we're going to have 100% donor retention, because first of all, that's not possible. And secondly, the whole sector has 63%, which, you can go a little bit higher even if you wanted to do 65% or 50%. But look at the benchmarks for the whole sector. It's very, very hard because this includes, Harvard University and the nonprofit that has a budget of $200,000. But you got to start somewhere. So the first-time donor retention rate will be 30%. 19% is the benchmark of the sector. You can calculate your donor retention rate over at Bloomerang, and you can find more benchmarks on that infographic. You can also find more benchmarks for the sector in terms of donor retention and acquisition over at the Association of Fundraising Professionals. It's just important to benchmark yourself when creating these goals. If you've never created these goals before, unless you have a trend that you can measure via your database from year to year to year to year, if you've never measured anything like this before, you want to look at some benchmarks and not just kind of invent things out of the air. Thought leadership. Thought leadership. Don't we all want to be thought leaders? We all do. And some of us, like John Hayden, are lucky to be thought leaders in their fields, but not all of us are. So if your goal is to position your CEO as a sought-after thought leader, this is a goal that I created with one of my clients. Big, hairy, audacious goal. Love it. She actually was getting there. So people had heard of her. She had a blog on Huffington Post. She wasn't coming out of nowhere, so we had some stuff to work with here. And the objectives we created. She had a Twitter account, so I know I'm going against the best practices of not starting with tools, but she had a Twitter account and she really wanted to use it to measure and increase her thought leadership metric. So I totally believe that that's completely acceptable if you're already using that and you find that it's working. You might want a metric, if you're not on Twitter, you might want to measure, you might want to say we will see a trend of increased engagement across social media channels and then determine the channels later. So we determine engagement as retweets, mentions, and favorites, which are now called likes, with a target of a 25% increase, and that was over 1 year. We will increase by 25% the number of national and regional media contacts following her on Twitter over 1 year. So that I felt like was a very good positive reflection. If she had big names following her on Twitter, then she's well on the way to her goal of being a thought leader. Whether or not they're reading her tweets or retweeting, we just picked metrics that we could measure. We picked objectives that we could measure over a year, and then in the next year we could actually measure we wanted to measure like media inquiries and those kinds of things. So we were trying to figure out what was feasible. She managed her own Twitter account. She's very busy, always on the road. What would be feasible in 1 year? We will build a LinkedIn plan this month with the ultimate objective of increasing her quality connections by 25%. So there was no LinkedIn plan. She was on LinkedIn. She didn't have a strategy around it. So one of the goals was to build a plan around LinkedIn and ultimately increase quality connections. And then we had not defined quality connections at that point, but you would have to go back and say, what is a quality connection to you, to your organization, to your CEO? We wanted to increase social shares on blogs, HuffPost articles, media placements and inquiries, and speaking engagements and inquiries. So that's really, I think a 50% increase in media placements, that's a very, very lofty objective. But we also wanted to see a 50% increase in inquiries, people that wanted to interview her, wanted to speak to her about the organization. And of course, speaking engagements, she really wanted to position herself on a national stage. Some other metrics. These are ones that I find are hugely important in pushing the needle towards becoming known as a thought leader, but also quality. So is it the New York Times or is it the Beverly Patch? You know, what you need to figure out what quality means to you. Is it quality in your field? Is it a peer-reviewed journal? Is it something on the national scope? Is it Nicholas Kristof? I mean, what does quality mean to you and to your organization? And how can you actually measure that? So you're going really, really specific and drilling down deep into what you actually want to happen and what success really, really does look like. So now you have objectives. Hopefully you all have some objectives in mind that you can create for your big, hairy, audacious goals. So what do you do with these objectives? Strategy, tools, and tactics. We're not going to go really too much into that because strategy webinar could easily be an hour, tools, tactics could easily be an hour. But you do want to start thinking about it. And I don't mean to tell you that all of these things happen in a vacuum. Your goals, objectives cannot happen in this vacuum where you're not kind of thinking about the tools and tactics that you're going to use. I just don't want you to start with, okay, let's start a blog, or let's jump on Facebook, let's jump on Snapchat. Now that you have defined your goals, your success, where you're going, kind of written a little bit of your roadmap, the start of your roadmap, think about your capacity. What are you able to do? Do you have a staff of one person? Do you have an entire marketing department? Do you have interns? Do you have access to volunteers? Do you have a committee? Think about what you're doing now. What can you add to? What is working now? What is not working that potentially you could jettison, that you could end, that you could change, you could improve, maybe put those resources to something else? Maybe you're purchasing some advertising in the newspaper, you're not able to tell the ROI on it, you don't really know if it's working. Can you move those resources over to another avenue where you can more directly measure the impact? So really think about what you're doing now. Think about your capacity to manage all these things. Create a content marketing plan. These are all strategies to help you achieve your objectives. You want to create a content marketing plan, collect and disseminate stories about our impact. That's fantastic. I love that. That will definitely help you achieve your objective of increasing website traffic, which will then help you achieve your goal of brand awareness. So these are strategies that will help you achieve those SMART objectives. These are just some of them. I'm not saying you need to do any of these, but these are some that I found to be the most effective. Create a social media ambassador program. Throwing ideas out there. Strategy, tools, and tactics, that's the fun part. That's when you have the whiteboard brainstorming session where everyone kind of goes and throws out ideas and you put them all against the wall and then you actually prioritize and figure out, okay, we are a staff of 5 people. We can't do all of these things, but let's prioritize them. Start a thank you campaign, start a hashtag campaign. These are all fantastic ways to help you achieve your objectives. These are the actual things you're going to be doing at the end of the day when you sit down at your computer. So the possibilities are really endless. This was a thank you campaign created by the United Way. I absolutely love it. So they started a thank you campaign. This was really along the lines of retaining donors. Thank you for investing in a brighter tomorrow and a better today. Created graphics, put them all over social media, created a whole multi-channel thank you campaign with the clear goal of retaining donors. This is a graphic created and they wanted to encourage people to share, to like. They're obviously doing fundraising, but it was a multi-channel campaign about, story sharing. They wanted to get user-generated stories. This is towards the goal of engaging community. Tell us your story, and the incentive that they gave people to tell their story was this donation. So throwing up a graphic like, tell us your story, engage with us on Facebook, that's not going to work. There's always needs to be a what's in it for me moment of anything that you're asking a potential donor or a potential storyteller to do. So this has a clear incentive for every share and like. Up to $60,000 goes to the Michael J. Fox Foundation. So the clear goal, fundraising, I don't think at the end of the day was the goal. The goal was engaging community, and then fundraising was just kind of a side goal, a side effect, which is a fantastic way to do it. So this is another one. This is a pin on Pinterest. There was a whole campaign of encouraging people to forgo a shower. This is a peer-to-peer fundraising campaign. So if I decided not to shower, people would donate until I raised $1,000 toward life-saving water systems in Africa. I think it's a fantastic way to raise awareness because the materials that they gave volunteers, there were a lot of statistics, a lot of stories, a lot of infographics, just raising awareness of the lack of clean and potable water in Africa, in specific countries in Africa. And it's something that's fun that people can do, easily share on Facebook, easily share across all their different channels to all their different networks. So this would be a fantastic goal. around raising awareness, maybe acquiring new donors, because donors that I would solicit may not necessarily have already given to the organization. So I think an online campaign like this is a great tool for achieving any of those goals. This is a hashtag, Share Humanity. You could easily measure, shares, mentions of this hashtag. You can measure it across all different platforms. Again, though, you need to know, is it pushing the envelope at the end of the day? What is the goal? What does success look like? Creating a great graphic and a great hashtag without that goal, without that measurable objective, it looks great and it feels great, but what does it actually do? You don't know if it is successful. And getting a lot of shares, that might really be your goal. And I think that's fantastic. But at the end, how does that, that might be your objective, measuring the number of shares on a hashtag, but does that get you closer to your goal at the end of the day? More strategies. Revamp your online donation page based on best practices in the sector. That's fantastic. That will get you towards your objective of getting new donors. New donors hate donation pages that are not mobile friendly, that are not optimized. Start a blog. That's really the one and only way to start thought leadership. Starting a blog where she or he can actually say what they think on this issue, and they can build a following. Build a following on social media, create some visuals. Those are the specific tasks that you're going to do to achieve your SMART objectives. Now, all of these are great ideas, and I encourage you to get out that whiteboard paint, and paint a wall in your office and write all of these down, but without saying who is going to do this and when and with what resources. It won't happen. We all know that. If it's not a line item in the budget, it will not happen. It won't. So I'm not saying you need to budget $10,000 towards Facebook ads. You do need to budget some money, obviously, towards staff, a person that's going to do this, and some money to a marketing budget. Because if it's not a line item, it's not going to be a priority for anyone. So who and when, this is going just a little bit further into who is going to do the actual work. Will we form a committee? What do we already have? What tools will we use? So for the idea, if you want to create a content marketing plan where we collect and disseminate stories about our impact through videos and photos, that's a fantastic idea, and that is a great tool to use to help you achieve your objective. But who? Is it going to be just you, and how are you going to add it onto the work that you're already doing? Are you going to form a committee? I think that's the best way to do it. What does that look like? What do we already have? And then what tools do we have at our disposal? All of these tools that I've just listed are free for nonprofits, and fantastic tools to use for this. So think about who, what, when, where, why with all of these fantastic ideas that you have. Break it down to daily, weekly, and monthly tasks. Monthly, you can create a new video, send an email blast, hold a social committee meeting. Weekly tasks. You want to write a blog post weekly, send an email to your social media ambassadors, and then daily what you're going to do. So if you figure out your tasks in this way, then it becomes a lot more manageable when you're looking at your calendar and you're figuring out, okay, what do I need to do? If you create a monthly video, that will give you fodder for your weekly blog post, that will give you fodder for Facebook, for Twitter. So these are just suggestions on how to sort of break down your tasks and break down what you're doing to get you to those great objectives. The other important point that I want to make is the value of the work that you do. And these bullet points are very, very important for you to convey the value to your board members, to volunteers, to your executive director. If you achieve your communication goals of brand awareness, engaging community, acquiring donors, retaining donors, and thought leadership, if you achieve all of those goals, it will definitely lead to increased donations, increased access to prospects, increased access to partners, word of mouth goodwill. That will lead to ability to hire and train more staff, ability to serve more of the people that you serve, to do more of the work that you do. Your prestige, positive coverage in the media, this is the real value of the work that you do. It's not getting 10,000 Facebook fans. That's not the value. The value lies in these bullets, and that's why we do what we do.